she had deep down inside of her soul, and he was determined to pull that from the depths of her being to the surface and into action. When the other nurses came in, he would joke with them, but then he would ask for his nurse by name. When others might have been turned off by her personality, he was just drawn to it. And she responded to him by ebbing away from her hard exterior and softening up to his words of affirmation. This is what he did. This is what I had never seen in him before. I had seen hints of it in his fathering. When my children would get upset, as all children do, I was a fixer. He fixed it without words. Just a hug from Daddy, and it all went away. This I learned from him. Sometimes all someone needs is to be acknowledged for the feelings they have and the soul that they are, and words can't mean anything anymore. He knew when to speak and when to be silent. He listened with his heart and not just his ears. He didn't formulate an answer before someone was finished speaking, and he cared about his impact on their lives. He hadn't given his life fully to Jesus until a few months after his diagnosis. He was adamant that it wasn't because of the cancer, as one of the ministers from the hospice facility assumed. He didn't talk about it much because he felt like it was too intimate of a topic to share quite yet. But he sure lived it out the last couple months of his life. Before the diagnosis, his life was driven by the need to provide for his family. After the diagnosis, he had an undeniable certainty that it was God's plan to show him that Chris didn't have to assume that responsibility anymore, and that God would take over that part and fully take care of his family. And God did. Chris saw the grace of God like he had never seen before. I mean, there were plenty of other times and examples I could give you, but for our home marriage, finances were a big stressor for us, and when God took that responsibility off of him, it allowed him to see God more fully. I will end with an excerpt from my book that was written at the beginning of his diagnosis, but still holds true for the rest of my life. Life is a place where we have the pleasure of learning how to listen to our Father's voice. Eventually, our response will change from the feeling of familiarity to the feeling of being known and feeling loved. What then is the first thing we want to do when something uncomfortable happens to us? Talk to someone we know and someone who loves us that can help walk us through the pain. God isn't going to let us walk through this valley alone. The first thing we need to do is often the last thing we try. We need to notice the footsteps right beside us and hold Jesus' hand in the eye of the storm. When I was a young teenager, I found myself in the middle of a hurricane on a vacation that was supposed to be sunny and full of ocean water and sand. We drove into the storm